luckily we had no idea how bad the real estate market was this was summer of 2008, and we were in Atlanta, Georgia, which was like one of the hardest hit markets in the country. And I mean, literally, this was like probably the worst location for the worst market in real estate history. But we had no idea because we knew nothing about real estate. And so we find a wholesaler, and he's taking us around property to property to property, and I was running the numbers, and we must have looked at 100 deals, and I just wasn't comfortable moving forward. And one day, about 6 months later, my wife said, "This is ridiculous. Like, we're looking at all these deals. We've had to have seen some good deals. You're just too scared to buy something." She said, "Next deal we see, we're purchasing. Doesn't matter what it is. Next deal we see, we're purchasing." Wholesaler took us out the next weekend, showed us 3 deals. And I said to my wife, "Okay, well, which one do you want?" She's like, "Well, which one do you think?" I was like, "I don't know. They all seem kind of the same to me." So she was like, "Okay, we're buying all 3."
Before this episode begins, I wanted to let you guys know that the Started Somewhere apparel is officially live. In the description of this video, you'll see a link. It says Started Somewhere apparel. You can grab a hoodie, all colors, all sizes, t-shirts, long sleeves, and even coffee mugs. The hoodies are my favorite. They're super comfortable, true to size. They look good. They feel good. And if you do grab one, you'll be directly supporting me and you'll be supporting the show. So any money that I make from the apparel will go directly back into the show. And I'd really appreciate it if you do want to go that extra mile and show your appreciation for the content. You can do so by grabbing yourself a piece of clothing. Now, we're also live on Patreon. Okay, now I have plans here in the very near future to put exclusive content, exclusive only content on the Patreon. The Patreon is just $5 a month. It's also in the description. And if you do want to show your support and get access to that exclusive interview content, we have some amazing guests coming out in the near future. And I'm going to be recording some private segments exclusively for Patreon members. You can also subscribe and show your support that way. And the last thing, before we get into the episode, I've realized after looking over the analytics that we have a lot of people that watch these episodes. They tune in each and every single week, and they're not subscribed to the channel. Check down below right now. Are you subscribed? If you're not, please consider subscribing. It really helps us out. It helps me out. I have a goal of hitting 1,000 subscribers before the end of the year. Can you help me do that? If you can, I'd really appreciate it. Drop a comment. Let me know if you did subscribe. Hit that like button. And of course, enjoy today's episode. All right, Jay, welcome to the show.
Thanks. Appreciate it.
Man, it's a pleasure to have you here, brother.
Thrilled to be here. So thanks for having me.
Absolutely, man. Absolutely. I love your books in the back, man. You got the library going on.
Oh, yeah, I'm a big fan of books, so I owe a lot of my success to other people's teachings and learnings and mistakes and failures and successes. And so I'm a huge fan of books and reading about what other people have done and what they've learned and trying not to make the same mistakes myself.
I love it, bro. If you had to go to a deserted island, you could only bring one book with you, man. What would it be?
Oh, jeez. So here's the crazy thing. I pretty much only read nonfiction these days, but if I were stuck with one book for the rest of my life, it would have to be a fiction book, and if it were fiction, it would probably be a Stephen King book. That's kind of what I grew up with. I love Stephen King books growing up, and so yeah, I don't read much fiction anymore, but that would probably be it.
Those are some hefty ones, man.
Oh yeah, there are some good books there.
It always blows my mind how somebody can write something that long.
It's great.
And have it make sense. Right?
Uh-huh.
It's unbelievable. And you're an author yourself, man, so you know the process.
Yeah, it's funny. I don't think of myself as an author. I have written a few books, but for me, it's kind of just dumping my brain and getting my thoughts out there, and the goal is really just to be able to help people in a way that's more scalable than doing podcasts or writing on my blog or any other way. It's just again, I don't think of myself as an author, but I guess technically I am.
Yeah, I mean, your books have definitely impacted thousands and thousands of people. I mean, how does that make you feel?
It feels great. And again, when I first started writing them, actually the goal was I wasn't writing the books to make money. I wasn't writing the books for any reason other than about 6, 7, 8 years ago, I started getting a lot of phone calls, a lot of text messages, emails. Everybody wanted to take me to lunch and do phone calls and all these things. I'm an introvert. And so it's really hard for me to sit down with somebody I don't know over lunch and have a conversation and make small talk. And so it was just really tough for me to have all these conversations. And my wife said to me at one point, she's like, well, if you want to be able to help people, but you don't want to like sit down and have a million lunches or phone calls, why don't you just write it all down and give people a book. And I was like, that's actually a really good idea. And so I did that. And then when people called and said, hey, can I pick your brain? I'm like, well, here, read this first. And then if you still have questions, then we can talk. And the nice thing was, because I guess I did a pretty good job writing the books. Most people read the books and they're just like, okay, that's 95% of what I need to know. And so that was kind of the reason I originally started writing the books. It was just more to keep from having to talk to
people. to avoid those lunch meetings and exactly. I want to take out the coffee and
exactly.
How about
I was drinking like 8 coffees a day. I was bouncing off the walls.
Yeah, man. This is my favorite one. Can I just pick your brain?
I
want to just pick your brain.
Yep.
I don't have any more brain left to give. I'm in the real estate world. I know you're in the real estate world. For any listeners out there, it's very hard to be in the real estate investing space without knowing who you are, and your name is everywhere. But for the people that aren't in real estate or aren't familiar with your work, would you mind to give us kind of like a brief overview of what you're all about?
Yeah, so I started investing back in 2008. I left the corporate world with my wife, and we decided to do something different, and that different. It wasn't, we didn't plan to become real estate investors. It just kind of happened. We not accidentally, but we just kind of did our first flip without really planning on doing it. It was just kind of impulse thing. And after the first one, we ended up doing 3 actually the first month because we found 3 good deals. It took us a long time to find a good deal, but we found 3 at one time. And so we kind of did those 3 deals, and then it was like, okay, we're figuring out how to do this. Let's do a couple more and a couple more. And here we are 12 years later. We've done about 400 flips. We own a bunch of rentals. We've done lending. We've done ground up new construction. We've done notes, mobile homes. And last week we just bought our first large apartment complex. So we've kind of done a little bit of everything over the last 12 years. And these days I kind of think of myself as just an all-around diversified real estate investor, even though I guess most people still know us for flipping.
Wow. 400 flips. A ton of rentals, man. It's a lot. It's a lot to handle, man. A lot going on there.
Yeah, it's fun, and I think part of the reason why I enjoy real estate is because I get bored easily. And so for me, I want to do something for a couple of years. I want to get really good at it. And then I want to do something else. But unlike most things in life, like if you go do something else, it's like you have to leave that first thing behind. The nice thing with real estate is I can go from flipping to rentals to notes to ground up construction to multifamily to whatever it is. And I don't have to leave behind the other stuff. If a deal comes along, I can decide what the best strategy is. And so I can be doing flips at the same time I'm buying rentals and doing that at the same time I'm putting together a syndication. And so it's just the synergies between all the different facets of real estate. It keeps it interesting. It allows me to do something different every day. But everything I'm doing is kind of contributing to something bigger.
Absolutely. How do you feel about the wholesale space? Have you done any wholesale deals?
Yeah, actually. So obviously you can't do 400 flips without occasionally wholesaling. And over the years, we'll pick and choose a few here and there. If our contractors are too busy, or if we find a deal that might be too thin for us, but we think there are other investors that might be interested, or a deal that might make a good rental, but we're not looking forward to doing rentals at that time, we might wholesale it. Over the last 6 months, 8 months, I mean, since COVID pretty much, what we've seen is, at least in the markets that we're in, we've seen a really big bump in values. And so we're still finding some good deals, but we're a little concerned about the market. So we don't want to be doing 3 and 4 and 5 month projects. We don't want to be taking on 10 or 15 projects at once, because we don't have the contractor network anymore to do that many deals at a time. So especially over the last few months, we've been doing a lot of wholesale. So pretty much every time we get a deal, we'll buy it, we'll close on it, and then the first thing we'll do is we'll put it back on the MLS. And if it's still sitting, we haven't sold it by the time we have the bandwidth to flip it or to turn it into a rental, we'll do that. But a lot of times these days, they're gone before we get there.
I was going to say, man, if it doesn't sell MLS, it's a nightmare deal where, I mean, the numbers are just terrible because everything is selling on MLS right now.
Yeah, we've had a few deals that are good flips, but they're really big flips. And basically, there aren't a ton of people in my main market. So I'm in Sarasota, Florida right now. There aren't a ton of people down here that are doing the big stuff, the full guts or the tear down rebuilds. So there are some things that we put on the MLS that don't get a lot of attention. But yeah, like you said, most things, as soon as you put them on the MLS, there's somebody out there that's looking to buy it.
Gone. Now, I'm curious, being that you're in Sarasota, how do you feel about investing into modular homes to flip those?
So we've done a bunch of mobile homes and modular homes in the past. We don't do as many now. These days, if I find a good mobile home deal, I'd rather hold it as a rental than flip it, because what we're finding is around here there aren't a ton of good mobile home deals because people love mobile homes around here. It tends to be because it's such a tourist area. There are a lot of people that will buy a mobile home as kind of just their vacation spot.
Right.
So they come down for a week or two, and they don't care if they stay in a hotel or a house or a mobile home. I mean, they just want to be near the beach. And so mobile homes down here are pretty popular. So we're not buying a whole lot. We're not finding a whole lot of good deals on them, but I love the space. We're invested in a couple mobile home syndications. I think it's definitely reasons.
Yeah, Jay, I lost you there for that last 5 seconds. Can you just repeat that last part?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think mobile homes are ripe for doing really well over the next couple of years, just because where the economy is, where the economy's headed. I think there are a lot of parts of real estate that may suffer over the next couple of years, but I think mobile homes are going to be pretty well insulated from any economic downturn.
Now, Jay, you mentioned earlier that you had some concerns about the market. I want to touch on that a little bit if we can.
Sure.
What concerns do you have from like a bird's eye view, like of everything that's going on?
Yeah, so well, obviously things right now, we're in a weird time. I mean, there's some good indicators. The stock market's doing well, and some other things are doing well. I mean, there's the foreclosure rate's low, and building is still going on. Developers are still like breaking ground on new houses. But then there are other things that like aren't as rosy, that aren't painting as rosy a picture of the economy. So GDP is really low. Unemployment is pretty high. Businesses are failing. People are struggling. And so right now, I think things are pretty stable. We're printing enough money. There's enough stimulus that the government is putting out there that things are pretty stable, both at the consumer level and at the business level. But at some point, that stimulus is likely to stop. At some point, the eviction moratoriums are likely to stop. At some point, the forbearances are likely to stop. And when that happens, I have a feeling we're going to see a softening in the economy in general, and that's going to overflow into the real estate market, and we're going to see a softening in real estate as well. And when that happens, I think there are certain parts of real estate that will continue to flourish and do well, certain areas that will continue to do well. But I think there are going to be a lot of other areas that struggle, and we could see a downturn in the real estate market for a couple of years.
It's very interesting insight, man, because I was actually kind of thinking that same thing. Right now, a lot of people are relying on government assistance, the government kind of keeping things turning. Meanwhile, if I take a drive down the local highway here, I'm seeing more and more businesses close their doors. I'm reading about it in the paper, with the airlines, and it just layoffs all over the place. I mean, it has to have some type of domino effect. It has to, right?
Absolutely. I mean, at some point, right now, there's talk of like literally 2 or 3 million households that haven't paid rent or are behind on their rent. So what happens when the evictions start up again and the landlords say, okay, now you owe me 6 months of back rent? What percentage of people out there can afford 6 months of back rent? Then there's something like 7 or 8% of homeowners that are in forbearance, meaning they've stopped paying their mortgage, and the mortgage companies are going to say either hopefully they're going to say, let's tack it on the back end and you just pay for a couple extra years. But if they say, hey, you need to come up with that 6 months of mortgage that you didn't pay, well, again, there aren't that many people out there that have 6 months of mortgage sitting around. And then when businesses stop getting their PPP money and their EIDL money and other stimulus money from the government, they're going to start laying people off and they're going to start closing their doors. I mean, we've heard numbers like 60% of independent restaurants may never recover and may go out of business. Airlines, you said yourself, are struggling. Tourism in general is struggling. I've heard 40% of independent hotels may go out of business. So at some point, and it could be weeks away, it could be months away, I don't know, but at some point there's going to be a reckoning, and all this is going to have to shake out in some way. I mean, all these jobs aren't just coming back. And so when that happens, I don't think anybody knows exactly where we're going to be, but I think it's safe to say that it's not going to be pretty.
However, you did just buy an apartment building.
Yep.
Right? So
absolutely.
Let's talk about that, right?
Sure.
Tell us about the deal.
So this is a 150-unit apartment complex in Houston, Texas. We paid about $130K per unit, so it was a Class B plus in an area that's filled mostly with A-class properties. So basically, we're the only B-class property in a whole area of A-class properties, which we love. So anytime you're going into an economic situation like now, being a little bit below everything else in the neighborhood is good, because there are going to be people who they want to live in an A-class apartment complex. They want all the amenities. They want the spa and the movie theater and the nice pool and the jacuzzi and the gym, but they may not be able to afford that anymore. So where are they going to go? Well, they're going to go to the next class down. They're going to go to the B class, the place that still has decent amenities, if not the best, to save money. So we're going to get all the overflow from the A-class apartments and the people that can't afford or don't want to keep spending money to stay in the A-class. At the same time, we're going to renovate. So we're going to take our B and turn it into a B plus, and we're going to kind of bridge that gap. We're going to put in better management. We're going to raise the rents. All in all, it's like it's just a nice sweet spot. And there are these deals out there these days. There's this sweet spot where even economic concerns are outweighed by just the value of a good cash flowing real estate deal. And this is just one of those deals that I mean, we bought it as a 6 cap. So it's making money from day one. If we didn't touch it right now, we'd still be making 6% returns on it. But the goal is over the next couple of years, we're going to improve management. We're going to do some CapEx. We're going to do some improvements. And hopefully we can turn that into a nice little profit for us 3 to 5 years down the road.
My man, 130K a door.
Yep.
150 unit. That's a big deal, man.
Mm-hmm.
That's the big boy leagues right there. Is that the biggest deal you've done so far?
It is the biggest deal we've done. We all in, we were at like 21 million, 22 million. So yeah, it's actually by far the biggest deal we've done. Nice,
man. I probably know exactly where it's at. Cause I've been around Houston a little bit, but is it in like that Galleria area?
It is. It's about a mile from the Galleria, just down one of the side roads. Yeah. It's called Augusta Court.
Okay.
And so, yeah, it's in that, it's on a street with like 7, 8, 9 other complexes, a couple thousand units.
Yeah, it's exploding over there, man. You're absolutely right with your strategy and your game plan.
Yep.
And they go quick in Houston too. Like,
oh yeah,
they'll put up a tower in like a couple of months and it's done and people are living there already.
It's crazy. Yeah, it's a crazy market, but I love that market. I love the city, and that's one of the things that I like about this deal is Houston. I think is poised to do well over the next couple of years. A lot of people moving from places like New York and Seattle and San Francisco and other big cities, and they finally have an opportunity to kind of work remotely because a lot of employers are saying, "Hey, you don't have to come back. You can work from anywhere in the country." Where are
Mm.
people going to go? They're going to go to the places that have lower income taxes, places that have lower cost of living, places that people want to live. I mean, Florida's really popular, Arizona's popular, Texas is popular. A lot of people want to live there, so people are going there. These are places that have wage growth. We are seeing population growth. We're seeing employment growth. We're seeing good employment diversity. I mean, all different types of industries in Houston. Certainly parts of Houston that I wouldn't want to be investing in, like the energy corridor, because it's not really well diversified. I mean, 90% of parts of Houston are all energy based.
Mm.
But much of Houston is really well diversified. So it's just a good city, and Texas is a good place to be investing right now.
Did you get some barbecue out there?
We did. Always get some barbecue when we're down there.
Heck yeah, man. Heck
Barbecue
yeah.
and Tex-Mex.
That's it, brother. Barbecue and Tex-Mex, man. So, and by the way, you actually just missed, like, I know before we started the show, you said you were out there. You just dodged a storm.
So we flew right over the storm both on the way out and the way back. Like between Florida and the storm was literally right between Florida and Texas. So we looked out of the airplane and you could see the really bad storm clouds below us.
Man. So, Jay, I want to switch gears here and go back in time because obviously you're doing a ton of things right now, buying some big deals. You've been investing for the last 12 years. Let's go back to your early years. First off, where did you grow up?
I grew up in just outside of Baltimore City in Baltimore. So typical. I mean, financially, we were not well to do. We struggled, but my parents worked hard and I got an education and there was always food on the table and education was always pushed. And so when I got out of high school, it was like nobody in my family really went to college, but it was just expected. So I ended up doing the college thing and ended up being an engineering major. Don't know why. I liked math. I was good at it. So I guess that was probably the reason. How long did I spend? 15 years in corporate America, just doing the corporate thing. And it never really occurred to me. And then in my mid 30s, I met my wife. We decided to get married, start a family. We were both working in the corporate world, ridiculous number of hours. And we both at the same time said, look, if we're going to start a family in our mid 30s, I mean, time's running out. We need to do something different. We can't do the corporate thing 80 hours a week. And basically spur of the moment, we quit our jobs. We moved across the country and we said, let's figure it out.
So it sounds like going through school and then enrolling in college, you just did it because that was like the expectation. Like, well, I'm just going to go to college.
It never occurred to me that there was another path.
Really?
And because that's just, my parents didn't go to college, and from their perspective, that solves all the problems. And so I was expected to do it. And yeah, it was never something that was even really discussed. It was just the obvious path. And look, here I am, how long? 30 years later. And I think college is a great thing for some people. Depending on what you want to do, depending on what field you want to go into, depending on where you go to school, college is a great choice. But then there are just as many people where college, I don't think, is the right choice. And it's not a necessity anymore like it was 15, 20 years ago. Even when I went to college, I mean, there really was this difference between success of people that go to college and people that don't go to college, and there was a much bigger divergence in salary and long-term success for those that went to college versus those that didn't. But here we are 20, 30 years later, and that gap has closed considerably. College has gotten more expensive, so even if you are making more money after you pay your college loans, you're making less money. And there are just so many other opportunities in this post-technology world, this post-internet world, where college just isn't that solution for everybody like it was back in the early 90s when I went to college.
Absolutely. Unless, of course, you go like the professional careers, you know.
Absolutely. If you're going to be a doctor, a lawyer, an engineer, if you're going to want to be a mathematician or a physicist, if you want to do one of the STEM, like science, technology, engineering, math type curriculums, it's fantastic. But if you're just going to get a liberal arts degree, hey, there are other ways to do that. And also, I'm a big fan. If you're going to go to college, whatever you major in, get a finance degree or get a business degree in addition. Do a minor in finance, because there's nothing you're going to do in this world to make money where having a finance degree or even a minor in finance or even just a few courses in finance isn't going to help you be more successful.
Now, Jay, have you heard of this thing called like For the People College or something? I was having a conversation the other day and somebody told me they enrolled in this online school. Right.
Okay.
And it's $2,000 to get the degree.
Okay.
Like for the whole, and it's kind of like a pay-as-you-go system. And I'm like, this is like a scam, you know, like somebody set this up in another country and they're just raking everybody's money. But I looked into it. It appears to be legit. I don't know if this is like where things are going or how much weight this degree would actually hold, but you can get on the website, it says you can get an MBA for like $6,000, like all in.
And here's the thing. I mean, the degree is part of it. That piece of paper is part of it. But for 95% of schools, and I'm making up that number, but for some really large percentage of schools, the piece of paper is meaningless. There are certainly some schools, if you get an MBA from Stanford or Harvard, or you get a law degree from Harvard or something like that, certainly that is different. But a lot of these schools, I got my MBA from San Jose State University. And let me tell you something. It's a piece of paper that says San Jose State University. It was a pretty good school. I learned a lot. But there's nothing that I learned in that school that I couldn't have learned on my own. And having that piece of paper hasn't really helped me. So I have a lot of respect. I think anybody that gets out of high school and decides to go off on their own, definitely you should do what you would do in college. You don't necessarily need to go to college, but you should pick a curriculum, you should pick a path, and you should create a self-study course, and you should read, and you should learn, and you should challenge yourself, and you should do essentially what you would do in college, even if it doesn't involve going to college and paying for college and living in a dorm. That stuff doesn't matter. But learning, getting the education, that's the important thing, because at the end of the day, that's the thing that's going to determine if you're successful or not.
Absolutely, man. I agree. Jay, do you remember what your first job was?
So I guess my first job was I was a grill cook at Friendly's restaurant.
And then that's a good place.
I like the ice cream. That was my first job. And then my second job was I did telemarketing. And as somebody who is an introvert, who doesn't have a sales bone in his body, I mean, I've gotten better at it. That telemarketing job was probably the hardest thing I've ever done in my life.
What were you offering?
Well, that's the crazy thing. I was working for a company that was giving away subscriptions to the Washington Post, basically giving away one of the most popular newspapers in the country. So, I mean, it was basically, here, you get a free 6-week or 12-week, whatever it was, subscription. And I mean, you would think as a telemarketing job, that's about as cushy as it gets. You're giving away a product that people already know and trust, and you're not charging them a penny. And yet it was hard. It was really, really hard to pick up that phone and like even try and give stuff away.
Yeah, man. It's like people are so conditioned nowadays. If you try to give them free money, they'll walk away because they think that you're trying to sell them something or there's a catch. It's like, no, it's really free. It's free.
And for me, just that whole sales thing, I've just never been comfortable with the sales thing. But let me tell you something. If there's one thing I've learned over the last 30 years in business and investing, is that the single most important skill for anybody to be successful is the ability to sell. Doesn't mean you have to do a hard sell, but the ability to be comfortable in your own skin, asking people to buy your product, whatever that is, whether it's information, whether it's content, whether it's a house, whether it's any product out there, a service, the ability to sell is the single most important skill for any investor or business person out there. And it's been really hard for me. And it's one of the things that I've had to overcome over the last 30 years and start to get at least a little more comfortable with. But if you look at all the people that are successful out there, the one thing they have in common is that they can sell.
Now, what bothers you, being an introverted personality, what bothers you most about selling? Is it the rejection, or just talking to somebody like a stranger that you don't know? Or
So one is I hate making small talk, and I know a good salespeople are good at building rapport. They're good at building relationships. For me, that's the toughest thing in the world. But the other thing is, it's just asking somebody to buy something. And the thing that I need to remember, and I always remind myself, is that when somebody buys something from me, they're not doing me a favor. I'm giving them something of value in return. And if I believe in my product and I believe that what I'm giving them in return for their money is worth the amount of money they're giving me, there's nothing wrong with it. And I should be thrilled. I am doing them a favor. I'm saying, here, take this. This is worth more than any amount of money you're going to give me. But it's really tough. It's just one of those things that I don't have that gene. And I grew up, my parents were both salespeople. My dad and my stepdad were both salespeople, and it was in their blood. It was in their genes. It's not for me. And so it's just been one of those things that I've struggled to kind of work on and overcome over the last however many years.
And it's awesome that you're self-aware to know that, it's not for you. That's important.
But I'm also self-aware enough to know that I have to figure out how to do it. And I've always had to figure out how to do it. And it's one of those things that I'm constantly practicing, and I'm constantly just working on my mindset when it comes to sales. And I'm constantly reinforcing in my kids that being a good salesperson, it doesn't mean making a hard sell. It just means giving a good product in return for whatever people pay for it.
In the real estate world, cold calling, cold texting is explosive, right? I mean, it seems like everybody's doing it.
Yep.
And I've tried the cold calling method. You got some cold callers hitting the phones, and I did not get one successful lead to agree to let a complete stranger come to their property. However, if I go online, TikTok, YouTube, apparently it's working for everybody. So, and I consider myself to know how to sell. So it's like, I don't know if I'm doing something wrong or what, but it's just, it never really appealed to me, right? Like calling a complete stranger and telling them, hey, sell me your house, as opposed to like doing the direct mail and letting them call me.
For me, it's not even strangers. It's people I know. I mean, I've written 4 books. I've sold 250,000 copies of my books, and I find it really tough to ask somebody I know to buy a copy of my book. Or when somebody I know wants to buy a copy of my book, like to not just give it away because I feel bad taking their money for it. It's just, I don't know. I don't know what it is, but it's just some way I was conditioned when I was younger.
It's all good, man. You've made it this far. It's all good.
So this is what I tell people when people ask me, so how have I gotten past that hump? And the way is that I surround myself with people that are really good at the stuff I'm not good at. So my wife, she is an amazing negotiator. She's an amazing salesperson. She can talk to anybody about anything forever. And she is much of the reason we've been successful in real estate, because she has all those skills that I don't have. On the other side, I have all the skills she doesn't have. I'm really good with the numbers and the spreadsheets and analyzing deals and underwriting. And so we make a really good team. But when it comes right down to it, I know I try and be self-aware about those things that I'm not good at, and I'm not scared to go hire or bring in people that are good at those things and that can kind of make up for my weaknesses. And I think that's what
Powerful.
a lot of people don't do that. A lot of people they have difficulty admitting their weaknesses or recognizing their weaknesses, and they don't want to hire somebody who is better at them at this or better than them at that. Let me tell you something. If I ever hire somebody that isn't smarter than I am or more hardworking than I am or better than I am at a whole lot of things, I've failed as a leader. I mean, that's my job. Surround myself with people who are smarter than I am.
Yeah, it's like the jack of all trades, master of none, right? You gotta get comfortable with delegating tasks and roles in your business, because you can't scale.
Exactly.
If you're doing it yourself, it's not possible. You know, it's awesome. You're good at math. I don't want to get sidetracked here, but I'm terrible at math. Like bad. I think I failed algebra, like pre-algebra. Like they kept holding me back three times.
But here's the good thing: when it comes to investing and math, I mean, there's nothing. We have spreadsheets these days. We have computers these days.
This is true.
Nothing you can't do.
This is very true. However, I've been taking a look through COVID and this whole thing going on into like the stock market and options trading, and I never realized like how heavy it was, like involved with math, right? Like,
oh yeah,
I'm looking at these option courses and it's all like math and formulas and the Greeks and data and delta, and I'm like, no, don't. What does this mean? So I'm curious, have you ever applied your math skills into the stock market?
The stock market. So I do some options trading, and I do apply my math skills in options trading. I'm a big fan. I spent much of my career at Microsoft, and a lot of the work that is done there. There's a lot of focus around risk management, and when it comes to risk management, there's some very quantitative ways to manage risk and math heavy ways of managing risk and making decisions. And so I've kind of been conditioned throughout my corporate career to use math to make decisions, business decisions, investing decisions, risk decisions. And so, yeah, I do a lot of mathy stuff, and I definitely have found that it's helped me. But by the same token, certainly it's probably held me back, because there are plenty of times where somebody else could go out and look at a deal and they'd say, okay, my gut tells me let's do it, and they'll go do it. And I'll spend 3 days. This is a deal we should do. The deal's gone. So it can backfire on you.
The over analyzing
Exactly
the situation. Yeah. Especially in today's market, man.
Absolutely.
You don't have 3 days anymore to look at a deal. Yeah,
Exactly.
Maybe a couple of hours. And then it's gone.
Exactly.
So, Jay, you said that you spent some time in the corporate world, which you just revealed to us was Microsoft. Is that right?
Yep.
Wow, man. It's a big gig right there. Microsoft.
That was actually, it was one of the hardest parts. That it's one of the big issues I see with people like wanting to come over from the corporate world. It's real easy to jump into real estate investing when you don't have a cushy job and you're not making 6 figures and you don't have a lot of other options. It was really hard for my wife and me because we were making a lot of money in the corporate world. And the idea of, okay, let's go out on our own and potentially fail and make $0 and even lose money was terrifying, because we were living a good life. I mean, we were working hard, but we were both making 6 figures and we had stock options, and my wife was flying around on the corporate jet at eBay, and I was traveling, living in nice hotels and at Microsoft. And it can be really tough when you like kind of build your life up to a point where everything is good. You've got nothing to worry about. And then somebody says, yeah, but if you take a big risk, it could be better. And that's a hard decision to make. And I know for my wife, so we never really had to struggle with that decision. But I know a lot of people that struggle with that decision. And if you don't have a spouse that's on the same page, it can make it even tougher.
What would you say was your favorite part about working in the corporate world?
This is going to sound horrible. But one of the things I've realized with real estate is that the bar is set really low. There are a lot of people in this industry that aren't very smart, that don't work hard, that don't follow up, that don't say what don't do what they say they're going to do, that are shady, that don't follow through. It's just, you never know when you're working with somebody, like if they're one of the good guys or not, and you never know if you can trust people. The thing I loved about the corporate world, especially at companies like Microsoft, is 99% of the people were brilliant. 99% of the people were hardworking. 99% of the people were trustworthy. And so I could go into work every day, and I never had to wonder if somebody was going to screw me over. I never had to wonder if somebody was going to not show up for work one day when I needed them to show up. I never had to wonder if somebody was trying to rip me off. But in the real estate world, that's actually a big concern. And anybody that's been in this business, you've been in this business a long time, you know as well as I do that it can be really tough. Even if you're in this business for a long time, it can be really tough to try and figure out who you can trust and who you can't trust. And so it's just one of those things that I took for granted for 15 years, that everybody was trustworthy, everybody was hardworking, everybody was smart. And then I come into real estate, and suddenly I can't take that for granted anymore.
It's like the people that do one deal and they're a guru.
Yeah, exactly.
I did one deal. I did a wholesale, made 5K assignment, go buy my new course.
Right, exactly. And now I made 5K, and now I'm going to go start charging 50K to teach.
It's everywhere, man. It's unbelievable. It really is. What was your least favorite part about working the corporate world?
I'm not a good employee. Like I don't work well with it. I don't play well with others. And so I never had a problem speaking my mind. I never had a problem like standing up when I disagreed with something or somebody. And in the corporate world, there's a lot of emphasis put on being a good team player. And going along with decisions, even if you think they're bad decisions, going along with them, not to rock the boat. So for me, that was the hardest thing. And that's one of the things I love about being in real estate. I can make my own decisions. If I make a bad decision, if I think I know everything and it turns out I'm an idiot, well, the only person that suffers is me. And so I'm responsible for making good decisions, and I suffer the consequences if I don't. And I love that.
I'm curious, did you ever meet Bill Gates?
I did.
Nice.
I did several occasions.
That guy's a badass, man. That guy's a badass.
Probably one of the more, you wouldn't know it by like just his physical stature, but he is one of the more intimidating people I've ever met.
No way. Really?
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Like in what way? Like to approaching him or conversation wise, or
he has a way of there's a good negotiating strategy. And making the other person kind of wonder what you're thinking and kind of throwing them off. He was really, really good at that. He was really good at just kind of, he would listen and not say anything. And you're sitting there thinking, what's he thinking? What's going on here? And then you end up talking more and talking more. And before you know it, like you're apologizing for things that you shouldn't be apologizing for. It's nuts. It's intimidating.
Oh man, that's awesome. Jay, I want to talk about that transition that you made from leaving the corporate world to buying your first deal, right? So I'm sure that when you left corporate America, you and your wife had a plan. You had some money stacked up, so you weren't going to worry about how you're going to pay your bills the next month. Is that right?
Second half of that was right. Yeah, we did have some. We did have some money. We weren't. I know it's always a better story when somebody said I had 38 cents in my pocket and I was living in my car. And
no. We want the truth, man.
That would make a great story. But I have to be honest. We had enough cash that if we didn't find a deal or didn't know what to do for the next 6 months, we were fine. But we didn't have a plan. We literally left the corporate world. I was thinking, okay, maybe we'll do buy some apartment buildings and do the syndication thing back before the syndication thing was popular. My wife was thinking, well, maybe we'll start a business. Maybe we'll do some consulting. I always liked animals. I was thinking of starting like a business making dog treats. My wife wanted to open a chocolate store. We were literally like just throwing around ideas. We can do anything. Let's pick something. And one day, while we were trying to figure out what to do, we were watching HGTV. And this was back in 2008 when I guess it still is like this today, but even more back then, I mean, literally everything on HGTV was a flipping show, a house flipping show. And so we were watching TV and trying to figure out what to do. And my wife said, well, while we're trying to figure this out, we can flip a house. And I am not a handy person. I can barely change a light bulb. And so I thought she was joking, but she was serious. She's the designer type and she loves those types of challenges. And she's like, no, let's flip a house. like, okay, well, I guess we can figure out how to flip a house. If this woman I'm about to marry wants to flip a house, I guess I'm going to flip a house. And so we spent about 6 months just reading and talking to other people in the business. And luckily, we had no idea how bad the real estate market was back in. This was summer of 2008, and we were in Atlanta, Georgia, which was like one of the hardest hit markets in the country. And I mean, literally, this was like probably the worst location for the worst market in real estate history. But we had no idea because we knew nothing about real estate. And so we find a wholesaler, and he's taking us around property to property to property, and I was running the numbers, and we must have looked at 100 deals, and I just wasn't comfortable moving forward. And one day, about 6 months later, my wife said, "This is ridiculous. Like, we're looking at all these deals. We've had to have seen some good deals. You're just too scared to buy something." She said, "Next deal we see, we're purchasing. Doesn't matter what it is. Next deal we see, we're purchasing." Wholesaler took us out the next weekend, showed us 3 deals. And I said to my wife, "Okay, well, which one do you want?" She's like, "Well, which one do you think?" I was like, "I don't know. They all seem kind of the same to me." So she was like, "Okay, we're buying all 3." And we bought 3 deals that day. And luckily, we bought 3 deals that day because the first one, the one we most likely would have bought, went so badly we never would have bought the next 2. We wouldn't have kept flipping houses. But we bought all 3. First one went really badly. Next 2 went really well. And by the time we had flipped the next 2, third one we kept for like 3 years before we sold it. But after we'd flipped the next 2, we're just like, okay, let's get another one and another one. And before we knew it, we had done 5 and then 10 and then 50. And then we started branching out into other states. And then people started asking me like I knew what I was talking about. It just kind of all snowballed quickly. And before I knew it, here we are 12 years later. And my wife and I still like are talking about like, are we still going to keep doing this real estate thing? Or are we going to go back to like starting a chocolate business or a dog treat business? Like, we never really made that decision that we're like real estate people. It just sort of happened.
So it sounds like your wife is the gas, and you're the brake.
Oh yeah, she is the linchpin to all of our success. She's the one that when I get too conservative or too scared to do something, she's like, "What's the worst that can happen? Let's go." She's the one that when I get stressed, she's like, "Come on, life is good. Everything will be fine." She really is. She's the one that I wouldn't be anywhere near where I am today if it weren't us as a team.
That's awesome, man. You know, being in a relationship with somebody that shares your same vision and hustle and drive and all that good stuff, man, it just makes it more fun, I feel.
Yeah, I talk to people all the time that tell me like, yeah, my wife or my husband just doesn't like have the drive to do this real estate thing. What can I do? And I don't have a good answer. I mean, if your spouse is holding you back, that makes things 10 times as hard. And so my biggest piece of advice around that is just have that discussion with your boyfriend or your girlfriend or your spouse before you get into a serious relationship. Because honestly, I mean, the biggest thing that couples fight over is money. And if you can't agree with your spouse on whether you should be working a 9-to-5 job or whether you should be out investing or starting your own business, that's something that can wreck a relationship. So it's worth it to have that discussion up front. And we're lucky.
Why is that? Why, Jay, why is money the most common argument in relationships? Why?
That's outside. That's above my pay grade.
It's the question I always ask myself is why. Like, it starts off and it's all like lovey-dovey, I love you, you love me kind of thing, and then as the relationship progresses, like money, and it causes arguments and eventually leads to divorce, and it's like.
If I had to guess, it's because in our society, money is all kind of mixed up in our feelings of self-worth, and when we struggle around money, when we feel like we don't have enough money, if we feel like we're not living up to our financial potential, then we feel like we are worth less and we're a failure. And you can't go into a relationship with a negative attitude. If you go into a relationship feeling like a failure, that other person is going to think of you as a failure. You need to be able to go into a relationship thinking, I'm worthy of this relationship and I'm worthy of being with this person. And because people are so tied up in this concept of having enough money. If they don't, they pull themselves down, and they convince themselves they're a failure, and that sabotages the relationship. That's my best guess.
Yeah. And in addition to that, with social media, they see everybody else doing something, and they're like, why aren't we doing that? He just bought his girlfriend a new Louis Vuitton bag. He just took his, and it's like, you know, it causes that friction, I guess.
Yeah, I'm lucky that my wife, like, if one day we lost it all and we're living in a 1-bedroom apartment, she'd be okay with it.
Mm-hmm.
And so I know that I don't have a lot of risk in the relationship. I don't have a lot of I can swing for the fences, and I can take risks because I know that failure from a financial perspective or a business perspective doesn't necessarily mean financial, or doesn't mean failure.
Mm. Now, Jay, I'm curious, before we go on, those 3 houses, how did you finance those?
So, real quick, is the internet really bad here?
It goes in and out every like couple of minutes, but then you come right back.
Okay, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
I don't know. I if that's on my side, I apologize.
No, it's no worries, man. It's no worries. For the listeners out there, you're not, your car stereo's not going muted.
Okay, just making sure.
No, you come right back. It's all good. No worries.
So this was actually interesting. So on my first 5 deals, I kind of did 5 different things. So my first deal I bought for cash. Like I said, we were lucky we got out of the corporate world. We had some cash. I was dumb enough to, on the first deal, to use all my cash and say, okay, let's not take out a loan. Second deal, I went to a bank and I actually got basically a regular homeowner loan. It ended up being a Fannie Mae loan that you would buy if you were buying an investment property. And I later found out that I pissed off my loan officer because I took out this loan and I paid it back about 2 months later, and it wasn't a flip loan, and so I shouldn't have used it for that, but they never asked. So I did that. But that was actually, I learned a lot because on that property, we had to get an appraisal. And we got the appraisal. The appraiser came out. The property was in pretty good shape, but the hot water heater didn't work. And because it was a regular loan, it was just a standard agency loan, the bank required that it basically be move-in ready. The stove needed to work, the refrigerator needed to work, the hot water heater needed to work, the windows needed to open and close, and the hot water heater didn't work. And so they said, basically, we can't give you this loan if the hot water heater doesn't work. So the seller was a bank. The bank wasn't going to replace the water heater. So literally a week before closing, I went in and I just replaced the water heater. And like, had that deal not closed, I would have been out $600-700 for replacing the water heater. So it was one of those things I learned really early. Like, there are certain types of banks and certain types of loans that you want to work with, and others you don't. So third deal, which I closed right around the same time, we used a hard money loan because I was seeing the difficulty in working with the big bank. So we did a hard money loan on the third one. The fourth one, we used a portfolio lender, so a small local bank that I realized, oh, wow, this is really easy. And so I ended up doing a whole lot of loans. I'm still doing a whole lot of loans with small local banks. And then the fifth deal, by the time I had my fifth deal, I had people coming to me saying, hey, can I lend you money? Can I invest with you? And so my fifth deal was private money. So on my first 5 deals, I mean, in retrospect, it was difficult. It was time consuming doing all different things. But in my first 5 deals, I did a cash deal, I did a hard money deal, I did a regular homeowner agency loan, I did a portfolio loan, and I did a private money loan. And so within the first 5 deals, I learned kind of everything there is to know about financing.
You tried it all.
I tried it all. And it made me realize moving forward what types of loans I wanted to get, what types of financing I wanted to pursue, and I could go after those. And it turns out private money, obviously, back then, nobody was doing private money. People weren't lending. But I realized early on that, wow, private money is nice. I can get 100% LTV if I can find somebody to do that. I can get relatively good rates. I can have the money in a couple days. I don't have to go through an appraisal or underwriting. They don't have to check my credit. So, I mean, I realized that, like, private money was where it's at. And it took me 20, 30, 50 deals before I got to the point where I could do all private money. But I knew early on that that was kind of like the place to be in terms of financing.
I agree. It's my favorite source to fund deals myself. I will say, however, many times I feel capped at the amount that I can borrow solely because people only have so much money.
Yep.
Whereas a bank or a hard money lender, they ain't running out of money. Yep. So I got to meet more people.
Yeah, and that's the thing. If you're going to do private money, I mean, you constantly have to be networking. You constantly have to be selling. You constantly have to be meeting new people. So there's definitely pros and cons of everything.
Now, Jay, do you think that new investors, right? Somebody, I'm curious to know your opinion on this. So somebody is listening right now. They go out tomorrow, start a real estate business. They don't know particular. I'm not going to say that word right now. They don't know what method they want to use, right? They don't know if they want to be in the house flipping business, the wholesale space, apartments, commercial strip centers, all that good stuff. Do you think that new investors have to start with houses and then graduate to other asset classes? Or can somebody just jump in tomorrow and do a 150 unit apartment building?
So let me start with, no, you don't need to start with single family houses. There's no rules that say, hey, you need to start with single family houses. That said, I mean, I've done literally 500-600 deals over the last 12 years. And this apartment complex, the first apartment complex deal that I closed last week, was 100 times more complex than any deal I've ever done. Could I have started with that deal? Yes, but. Yes, I could have started with that deal, but I would have wanted to have partnered with or been mentored by or been assisted by somebody that was intimately familiar with those types of deals. I typically think if you're going to start with single family houses, it's always great to have a partner or a mentor or somebody that can guide you. But if you don't, you can learn it on your own. I learned how to flip houses myself. I learned rentals myself. I learned notes pretty much myself. But as you move up into larger assets and more complicated, 150 unit complex, it's not more complicated from a renovation standpoint. You're basically just renovating 150 units. It's not more complicated from a managing tenant standpoint. Basically, you just have a bigger property management team. But it gets a lot more complicated when you do the underwriting and figuring out how the numbers work and figuring out the risk profile of things that can happen and financing sensitivities and what's likely to happen if with market risk and personnel risk. I mean, there's just a whole lot of other things to think about. And when you start to bring all the different variables together, there's just so many more things that you don't think about or that can go wrong or that can happen. And you're like, oh, how did I not think of that? And somebody that's done it before, they've got checklists and they've got spreadsheets and they've got stories upon stories upon stories of all the things that can go wrong. And so having somebody that can hold your hand or partner with you or guide you through those types of deals really is going to make the difference between success and failure. The other thing is I could do 5 or 10 flips and I have enough experience that if somebody loans me money or invest money in one of my flips, I'm probably not going to be too risky with their money. I'm not going to lose their money most likely. But this first apartment complex deal, I raised $8 million. I had people like basically bringing me $8 million. That's a lot of money to put on the line for people that are trusting me to get this deal done. If I don't have partners that know what they're doing and that can guide me through it, I'm basically risking $8 million of other people's money. So certainly the numbers get bigger and the risk of other people's money and risk your reputation increases. So can you start with a much bigger deal? Absolutely. But you need to be willing to accept the greater risk. And I highly recommend finding somebody that can guide you through it so that you don't make the same mistakes that most people make the first time they go through those types of deals.
Mm. And I couldn't agree more, bro. Honestly, I think single family is a great starting point.
Yeah.
You know, I recommend people go flip a house.
Oh, absolutely.
Flip a house
Absolutely.
first. Learn
Flip a house.
learn that process. Yeah.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I mean, I would tell somebody, learn to flip, learn to wholesale, learn to do rentals. If you can do those three things,
Can move up.
you now have the foundation to do notes and lending and new construction and multifamily and anything else you want to do. But those three things, flipping, wholesaling, rentals, are kind of the foundation. You'll learn the transactional side, you'll learn the cash flow side, you'll learn the sales side, you'll learn the business side. I mean, that's a nice, well-rounded education right there that'll kind of lead you into the other things.
Absolutely, man. Now, Jay, outside of the business world and the entrepreneurial endeavors, what are your personal hobbies? What does Jay like to do when he's not working?
What do I like to do? So I played professional poker for a long time. So I still do that occasionally. What else?
So there was actually a kick-ass poker club called Post Oak Poker Club right next to
Really?
They got closed down.
Oh,
Yeah.
that's so funny.
So in Texas, obviously gambling's illegal.
Uh-huh.
But they found a loophole where if they do a membership and charge you for the seat with no rake,
Yep.
they can operate. And the places are popping up all over the place. It's like $10 for a half an hour or something like that, And there was a really nice one right there, but they got closed down, man. They got shut down.
I know those popped up. A lot of states found that loophole. A lot of people in a lot of states found that loophole, and most of them have gone away now. But yeah, so I did that for a long time, and still do. I own stable racehorses, so I love horses, and so I spend a lot of my time these days investing in racehorses and doing the thoroughbred thing, and then I spend a lot of time with my family.
Nice, man. How do you feel about the Derby just ended, right?
Yeah. So we came real close to having a horse in the Derby this year, and so
Nice.
I'm a little sad that we didn't quite make it, but
Get him next year.
yeah, hopefully next year.
That's awesome, brother. That's awesome. Jay, the people are inspired. They've been listening for the last 50-something minutes, man. The person that's tuned in right now, they're inspired, they're encouraged to go out there and start their own thing. What's your message to that person?
I'd say my biggest message right now is the perfect time to be starting. So this is, I mean, when I say now, I mean next 6 to 12 months most likely. I think what we're going to see over the next 6 to 12 months is we're going to see a downturn that's going to affect the real estate market. I think a lot of investors who have been sitting back and kind of letting the market keep them afloat for the last few years, these investors who may not be great at what they do, but they've been successful because the market's just gone up and up and up. I think a lot of those investors are going to go away. And I think the investors that are going to do well are the ones that understand the fundamentals, the ones that really put in the hard work and the study and the time and the effort. And so I think there's going to be an opportunity. I think we're going to see a clearing of the competition over the next year or so. And there's going to be an opportunity for new investors to emerge, the ones that really work hard and study and plan and know how to prepare. I think there's going to be a lot of opportunity that we haven't seen since 2008, 9, 10.
You're getting me excited, Jay. You getting me excited. I need a deal, man. We're hurting over here, brother. We hurting.
I agree. It's
man.
I'm ready for it.
Awesome, brother. Awesome, man. Jay, are you currently promoting anything, or would you like to share, anything that you have going on with the people?
Sure. So my wife and I host a business podcast called the Bigger Pockets Business Podcast. So I'm really excited about that. So for anybody out there that's looking to get more into business entrepreneurship and learn more about starting a business or growing or scaling a business, check out the Bigger Pockets Business Podcast. I've got 4 books out there. So the book on flipping houses, the book on estimating rehab costs, the book on negotiating real estate, and my most recent book, which is called Recession-Proof Real Estate Investing. And that's all about economic cycles and how to change up your strategies and your tactics throughout different parts of the economic cycle so that you can continue to make money and reduce your risk. So for anybody that's looking to learn about the economy and how it works and how it affects us as real estate investors, check out Recession Proof Real Estate Investing. And that's about it. If anybody wants to reach out to me, my website is jscott.com and my email is j@jscott.com.
Awesome. Now, are the books on the website?
The books are available in two places. You can get them on Amazon.com or BiggerPockets.com. BiggerPockets is the publisher, so you can get them on BiggerPockets.com.
Much love to Bigger Pockets too.
Love 'em.
I've been on there for 7 years or something, however long I've been in the game. So much love to Bigger Pockets, and grab the book, people. Jay, it's been a pleasure chatting with you, man. I hope you enjoy the rest of your week, brother.
I appreciate you too.
Best
Thanks
of
for
luck,
having me.
man. Take care.
Appreciate it.